They thought they got away with it, but God has other plans. Listen carefully, because what I am about to speak is not speculation, it is divine timing unfolding. I am Archangel Michael, and I come now with a message of holy balance, because heaven has been silent long enough. They thought it was over. They thought time erased it. They thought because nothing happened immediately, nothing ever would. But hear this clearly, God does not forget what He allows to pass for a season. You watched them walk away without consequence. You saw them continue as if nothing happened. You questioned why injustice seemed to prosper while you carried the weight of truth. And in the quiet moments, you wondered if God saw it at all. He did. Every word spoken in secret. Every action taken without accountability. Every decision that harmed you while they justified it to themselves. Nothing slipped past Him. What you mistook for delay was divine restraint. What they mistook for escape was borrowed time. Because God does not always respond immediately, He responds precisely. They assumed silence meant approval. They assumed distance meant safety. They assumed the chapter was closed because you stopped reacting. But heaven was never finished. God allowed them to believe they got away with it so their confidence could expose them later. He allowed them to continue so the pattern could mature. He allowed them to speak freely so intention could be revealed. Justice does not rush, it waits until denial is impossible. You may feel something shifting now. A tightening in the atmosphere. A sense that what was buried is starting to surface. That is not anxiety. That is alignment. Because when God prepares to act, the unseen begins to move before the visible follows. This message finds you now because the season of watching quietly is ending. You were never meant to confront them. Never meant to expose them. Never meant to prove what you already knew. God took that assignment upon Himself. They thought your silence meant weakness. They thought your distance meant defeat. They thought your restraint meant surrender. They were wrong. Your stillness was strategy. Your patience was protection. Your endurance was preparation. While they were assuming safety, heaven was recording patterns. While they were rewriting narratives, God was preserving truth. While they were moving forward carelessly, justice was forming quietly. And now, hear this. The scales are shifting. What they avoided is returning in a different form. What they dismissed is resurfacing with clarity. What they thought was buried is being brought back into light. Not through revenge. Not through chaos. But through consequence. God's plans are not reactionary. They are corrective. Soon, circumstances will begin to mirror intention. Opportunities will dry up without explanation. Support will withdraw without warning. Questions will arise they cannot answer. And they will not understand why. Because they never realized that what they did to you was also something they did against order. God is not responding because you were hurt. He is responding because truth was violated. And truth always demands balance. You may feel conflicted as this unfolds. Part of you will want to warn them. Part of you will want to explain. Part of you may even feel compassion. Let God handle it. This is not your battle to finish. It never was. Your role was to remain clean while justice prepared itself. And because you did, you will not be caught in the fallout. You will watch from a distance as clarity replaces arrogance. As exposure replaces confidence. As consequences arrive without announcement. This is not punishment. It is alignment being restored. As this message settles, remain grounded. Do not rush ahead of what heaven is doing. Do not interfere with what God is correcting. If staying connected to this message feels aligned, even a quiet act of support helps ensure these divine warnings and confirmations continue reaching those who are also waiting for justice, without disrupting the sacred flow. Because what God is about to reveal next will explain why they were allowed to believe they got away with it. And when you understand that reason, everything about this season will finally make sense. Stay with me now, because this is where heaven reveals what was really happening while you thought nothing was happening. I am Archangel Michael, and I tell you this with certainty: God was not ignoring the injustice. He was building the response. You saw the outward picture. They continued freely. They spoke confidently. They moved as if untouched. But you did not see what was unfolding beneath the surface. God does not dismantle wrongdoing from the outside first. He begins by removing covering. While they believed they were protected, heaven was withdrawing grace they mistook for entitlement. While they assumed favor, God was lifting restraint and allowing their true nature to surface. While they felt safe, their foundations were quietly weakening. This is why you were instructed to remain silent. If you had spoken, the narrative would have shifted to defense. If you had reacted, attention would have moved away from truth. If you had intervened, consequences would have been delayed. So God kept you still. He needed the pattern to complete itself. Justice requires consistency. Exposure requires repetition. Truth requires time to speak without interruption. And they gave it all freely. They said too much. Acted too boldly. Assumed too confidently. Each step forward without accountability was another step toward self-exposure. God allowed them to overextend. To rely on assumptions. To operate without discernment. Not to trap them, but to reveal them. Because when correction comes too early, it can be denied. But when it comes at the right moment, it is undeniable. You may soon notice changes that seem unrelated at first. Conversations becoming strained. Support thinning. Opportunities stalling without explanation. This is not coincidence. It is withdrawal. When God prepares to act, He removes buffers. They will begin to feel the weight of what they dismissed. The resistance of what they ignored. The consequences of what they minimized. And here is the part you must understand clearly: they will not connect it to you. They will think it is bad luck, timing, external pressure. But heaven knows the root. Because justice is not about blame, it is about balance. You were never meant to be the instrument of correction. You were meant to be preserved while correction formed. That is why your path has remained stable, even if quiet. That is why your peace has returned, even if clarity was delayed. That is why you were protected from bitterness, even when questions remained. God was separating outcomes. You are not part of what is about to unfold for them. Do not step into it. Do not comment on it. Do not attempt to interpret it for others. Remain distant but aware. This is the most important instruction now: do not interfere with divine correction. Compassion does not mean intervention. Forgiveness does not mean involvement. Awareness does not mean engagement. Let God complete what He began. You may feel a pull to reach out, to soften the landing, to make sense of what's happening. Resist it. Because once God removes protection from a situation, re-entry carries risk. You were removed for a reason. And now, listen carefully, your removal was the first sign of judgment. Not against them, but against the situation. God does not correct people by hurting them. He corrects by removing access to what sustained the illusion. That is why you were separated. You were never meant to be collateral damage. And soon, this separation will make even more sense. Because what unfolds next will clarify who was operating in alignment, and who was not. The outcomes will speak louder than explanations ever could. And when others begin to notice the shift, they may come to you with questions. Be careful. You are not here to narrate justice. You are here to walk forward clean. Let God tell the story. Your silence will protect you from being associated with what is collapsing. And yes, something is collapsing. Not dramatically. Not publicly at first. But structurally. The supports they leaned on are loosening. The influence they assumed is fading. The confidence they displayed is being tested. And they will not know why. But heaven does. As this unfolds, stay steady. Do not feel guilty for their discomfort. Do not feel responsible for their consequences. Do not doubt the process. God is correcting what you could not fix without compromising yourself. And that is mercy. If remaining connected to this message feels aligned, even a gentle sign of support helps ensure these divine warnings and confirmations continue reaching those who are watching justice form quietly, without breaking the sacred flow. Because what God is about to reveal next will explain how the very thing they used to get ahead will become the thing that exposes them. And that turn is closer than you realize. Now listen with deeper attention, because this is where heaven reveals why the very advantage they relied on is becoming their unraveling. I am Archangel Michael, and I tell you this with precision: God does not dismantle injustice by force. He dismantles it by truth colliding with time. What they used to get ahead was never sustainable. It only worked because no one challenged it, yet. It only stood because it was never tested, until now. They leveraged silence. They leaned on assumptions. They benefited from your restraint. And they mistook all of that for immunity. But there is a law that never bends: what is built without integrity cannot endure pressure. God allowed them to operate long enough for pressure to arrive. Pressure reveals structure. Pressure exposes motive. Pressure separates skill from character. You may notice that the same tactics they once used so confidently are no longer effective. The same influence no longer persuades. The same explanations no longer convince. This is not resistance, it is exposure in motion. Because God is not tearing anything down arbitrarily. He is allowing truth to test it. And when truth tests something built on shortcuts, cracks appear naturally. This is why you were removed early. If you had stayed, you would have been blamed for what is failing now. If you had spoken, you would have been accused of bitterness. If you had intervened, you would have been tied to the outcome. So God separated you, quietly. You were extracted from a structure that was already compromised. Now that structure is being asked to support weight it was never designed to carry. And it cannot. The very strategy they relied on is becoming predictable. The very pattern they repeated is becoming visible. The very confidence they projected is being questioned. This is how divine justice works. It turns advantage into accountability. They believed momentum meant approval. They believed continuation meant safety. They believed time meant escape. But time is not a shield. It is a witness. And now time is testifying. There will be moments when you are tempted to say, "I knew this would happen." Release that thought. You did not need foresight to see it, you needed obedience to survive it. God was not asking you to be right. He was asking you to remain untangled. And you did. That is why your spirit has remained intact while their foundation is being examined. Soon, decisions they made quickly will demand explanations they cannot provide. Shortcuts will require justification. Stories will need consistency. And under scrutiny, inconsistencies surface. Not because someone exposed them, but because truth demands coherence. You may feel a sense of validation as this unfolds. Not satisfaction, validation. The quiet knowing that your restraint was not wasted. That your patience was not foolish. That your silence was not submission. But do not linger there. Validation is not the destination. Freedom is. God is not showing you this to keep you watching the collapse. He is showing you so you stop doubting your own discernment. This season is sealing something within you. You will no longer override intuition to keep peace. You will no longer ignore patterns to preserve comfort. You will no longer tolerate imbalance to avoid conflict. That is growth born from clarity. And here is the deeper truth. This correction is happening now because it no longer affects you. If it had happened earlier, it would have harmed you. If it had happened while you were still attached, it would have pulled you into chaos. But now, you are clear. So God can allow consequences to unfold without pulling you back into the story. That is protection. Others may come to you, confused, asking for insight. They may want explanation. They may seek your perspective. Be careful. You are not meant to become a commentator on collapse. You are meant to be a witness of alignment. Speak only if led. Respond only if necessary. Silence will continue to serve you well. Because what God is doing now is not loud. It is surgical. Layer by layer, the illusion is being dismantled. Piece by piece, the structure is being examined. Step by step, accountability is replacing assumption. And none of it requires your involvement. You may even notice a strange peace when you think about them now. Not indifference, but release. That is a sign the lesson has been integrated. You are no longer waiting for justice. You are walking in alignment. And alignment does not need to look back to confirm itself. As this message settles, allow yourself to trust the process fully. Not because you see everything, but because God does. And if staying connected to this guidance feels aligned, even a gentle sign of support helps keep this stream flowing, quietly, without disrupting what heaven is correcting behind the scenes. Because what God is about to reveal next will not just show how they are being exposed. It will reveal what is being opened for you now that the weight of their actions no longer touches your path. And that opening is closer than you think. Remain attentive now, because this is where heaven begins to shift your focus away from what is collapsing and toward what is opening. I am Archangel Michael, and I tell you this plainly: God does not correct injustice only to leave you standing still. He corrects it so you can move forward unburdened. Up until now, your awareness has been anchored to what went wrong. Not because you wanted to dwell there, but because your spirit needed confirmation that truth mattered. That confirmation is arriving. And as it does, something subtle but powerful is happening within you. Your attention is loosening its grip on the past. Your thoughts are no longer circling old questions. Your emotions are no longer tied to outcomes that never belonged to you. That is release. And release is always the doorway to expansion. God is not asking you to celebrate what is happening to them. He is asking you to recognize what is no longer happening to you. The weight you carried, quietly, internally, is lifting. The vigilance you maintained, watching, waiting, bracing, is easing. The tension that lived beneath your calm is dissolving. That is not numbness. That is freedom returning. This is why the correction had to unfold now. Not earlier, because you would have been pulled back into it emotionally. Not later, because lingering awareness would have delayed your movement. Now, because you are strong enough to stay forward-facing. You may notice new ideas surfacing. Opportunities reappearing in altered form. Conversations shifting toward possibility instead of explanation. Do not dismiss these signs. They are invitations. God is redirecting your energy from observation to participation, from watching justice unfold to stepping into alignment. This is the phase where many hesitate. Because it feels strange to move forward while something unresolved is still happening behind you. But hear this clearly, it is resolved. Not finished, perhaps, but resolved. The outcome no longer requires your attention. God has taken full responsibility for correction. Your responsibility now is direction. You are being asked to walk again without looking over your shoulder. To plan without contingency for interference. To trust without guarding every step. That trust is not naive, it is earned. You have seen enough to know when to walk away. You have learned enough to recognize imbalance early. You have healed enough to move without bitterness. That is readiness. And readiness attracts opportunity. There is a door ahead that did not open before because your energy was tied elsewhere. There is a path becoming visible that required clarity you did not yet have. There is a role waiting that demands steadiness more than speed. God is not rushing you into it. He is clearing the path. You may feel moments of hesitation, old instincts to wait, to verify, to hold back. Pause, but do not retreat. Those instincts once protected you. Now they must be refined. Discernment stays. Fear goes. God is teaching you the difference. As you step forward, you may notice that support feels different now. Quieter. More intentional. Less dramatic. That is alignment. When noise leaves, substance remains. You are entering a season where growth is not fueled by urgency, but by consistency. Where movement is guided by peace, not pressure. Where decisions are made from clarity, not defense. This is what correction was meant to restore. Balance. You may also notice a shift in how others respond to you. Not because they know what happened, but because your presence has changed. You are steadier, clearer, less reactive. That steadiness carries authority. People respond to authority even when they cannot explain why. And this authority was forged in silence, not applause. This is why God allowed you to endure quietly. He was not testing your patience. He was establishing your weight. Now that weight is stable enough to carry responsibility. Responsibility that does not seek recognition. Responsibility that does not demand explanation. Responsibility that does not react to noise. You are not stepping into a louder season. You are stepping into a truer one. And truth simplifies everything. As this phase unfolds, stay present. Stay observant. Stay aligned. Do not rush to define what comes next. Let it reveal itself. God is not asking you to chase anything now. What belongs to you will approach without force. And if remaining connected to this guidance feels aligned, even a quiet sign of support helps keep this flow steady, without interrupting what heaven is positioning beneath the surface. Because the final movement God is preparing will not be about what was corrected behind you. It will be about the decision you make when the path ahead becomes unmistakably clear. And that decision will seal this season of justice into a season of purpose. Stay with me now, because this is where heaven brings the matter to completion, not with noise, but with authority. I am Archangel Michael, and I tell you this with final clarity: what God has been correcting was never meant to consume your future. It was meant to clear it. The moment you stopped needing an explanation, the process accelerated. The moment you released the need to be understood, justice gained momentum. The moment you trusted God to handle what you could not, balance began to settle. This is how divine plans conclude, not with revenge, but with realignment. They thought they got away with it because they measured outcome by time. God measured outcome by truth. And truth always finishes what it starts. You may not witness every consequence. You may not see every layer unfold. You may not receive public confirmation of what heaven corrected. And that is intentional. Because God is not restoring you to be an observer of justice. He is restoring you to be free from it. Freedom does not require updates. Freedom does not require validation. Freedom does not require the story to end loudly. It only requires alignment. You are aligned now. That is why your spirit feels quieter. Why your thoughts feel less tangled. Why your energy is no longer pulled backward. This is not forgetting. This is closure without ceremony. God is teaching you something powerful here. Completion does not always announce itself. Sometimes it arrives as peace. Sometimes as clarity. Sometimes as the sudden absence of concern. You may wake up one day and realize you no longer think about it. That is not avoidance. That is healing confirmed. And when healing is confirmed, movement begins naturally. There is a decision ahead, not forced, not urgent, but necessary. It will ask you to choose forward without carrying proof. To commit without contingency. To step into opportunity without waiting for full explanation. This decision will not feel dramatic. It will feel right. And heaven will recognize it immediately. Because when you choose forward after justice, you confirm that your trust was always in God, not in outcome. That is the seal. Once you make that choice, momentum will return. Not rushed. Not overwhelming. But steady. The kind of momentum that does not collapse under pressure. The kind that does not depend on reaction. The kind that is sustainable. You will notice doors opening without struggle. Conversations aligning without effort. Support appearing without negotiation. This is not compensation. This is restoration of flow. God is not rewarding you for enduring. He is restoring what was interrupted. And He is doing it without drawing attention to the correction. Because the focus is no longer on what went wrong. It is on what is ready now. You are ready. Not because everything is perfect. Not because every question is answered. But because you no longer need answers to move. That is maturity. That is authority. That is alignment sealed. Remain grounded as you step forward. Do not rush to define the next chapter. Let it unfold. God does not reveal the full path to those who still look back. He reveals it to those who walk forward trusting that the ground beneath them is secure. And it is. What they thought they escaped is no longer your concern. What God corrected no longer touches your steps. What was unjust has been addressed at the level that matters. Now your path is clear. Not because everything behind you collapsed, but because everything ahead of you is open. And this is the final truth heaven wants you to receive. Justice was never meant to stop them. It was meant to release you. Walk forward now. Unburdened. Unattached. Aligned. Because what God is unfolding next does not require you to carry memory of the past. Only the wisdom it produced. And that wisdom will guide you exactly where you are meant to be.